Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Hannah Mollison. I am the Sales Director here at Workwell Outsourcing, and I'm really pleased to be presenting this webinar today on traits of top contract billers that anyone can develop. This webinar is part of our educational series from the Workwell Outsourcing Academy, specifically for recruitment agencies to support their growth, provide value and industry insights. All of our webinars are available either on our YouTube page or our Spotify, so if you'd like to catch any of the previous episodes, you can find them all there. For those of you who don't know who the Workwell Group is, we are the UK's biggest service provider for recruitment agencies, from funding, tech and outsourcing to international, EOR and UK umbrella. Our goal is to enable agencies to focus on their core business of recruitment while we handle key operational functions. Today is the second in our three-part series where we're collaborating with Coral to demystify contract recruitment and give you the tools to not only introduce contract into your business, but create a thriving contractor desk. And today I am joined by the lovely Alice Carroll. Alice, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to it.
Good. Alice has trained and developed recruitment businesses, teams and individuals for over 25 years, and she specialises in partnering with scale up, so has a wealth of experience. Alice, thanks again for joining me today. I'm really pleased to have you here and the value that you're going to add. I think as a starting point, it'd be good just to introduce Coral and tell us a little bit more about Coral, but also a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So Coral Coached, we are a specialist coaching business working with recruitment companies. Tends to be recruitment companies who are progressive and want to grow, want to really maximise on the business for themselves and their teams. We are three people and we run our own recruitment agency as well, running contract desks. So Kate and Simon Cross are the other members, and I think it was Kate who spoke with you last week about cracking contract DNA. The reason that we've come into working together is because we would love to be able to share our experience and our knowledge around contracts in particular with other agencies, basically. So I'm a coach and a trainer, and I met Simon and Kate back in 1999, so ancient time ago, when we were all at Hilmaglyn, which is now Randstad CPE. I was training manager there, and Simon and Kate were on my first induction. So we've been connected ever since then, and I've been basically I helped Hilmaglyn scale up to 400 staff from 50 over the course of 5 years when we were bought by Randstad. And since 2009, I've been either partnering with or actually taking interim director roles as people director in recruitment businesses. Really often those ones who are quite big enough to need a full-time person in there doing that role. So I'm used to working with businesses who are growing, scaling up, etc. Yeah.
Right. So you, Kate and Simon go way back.
Way back. I mean, they met at Hilmaglyn and went off travelling to Australia. They ran temp desks in the London office when I was national training manager, and they came back 17 years ago and set up Harvey Jacob and got married and had a baby and all those things, and I've helped them with Harvey Jacob, and I'm now on the board of Harvey Jacob too. So yeah, it's great because we've got the same DNA ourselves about what's important in great recruitment.
And how many recruitment agencies do you think you've worked with throughout your career then?
Whoa. Well, I know that over the last 10 years, I partnered with 25 because I've had a look. But before that as well, I did an awful lot of training in group at Hilmaglyn. So once we were owned by Randstad, we became like a flagship training department that were hunted out to others within the group if they were non-compete. So I mean, probably up to 50 businesses, but thousands of recruiters I've worked with, perm and contract over the years. But you get to see the patterns and the trends of what works. And the thing for me that I've I've really discovered over the last sort of 10, 15 years or so is that you can give people all the skills in the world. You can sit in a training room and say, right, this is exactly how you use these open questions to make the call, etc. But it's the behaviours that actually dominate success, that they drive success. And so because of that, I've become more and more interested in the behavioural aspects of recruiters, well, anyone I work with, leaders as well. And I've just started to notice, well, not started, over the last 10 years or so, I've been using a particular profiling system that really highlights things that people do naturally and instinctively, and helping people to harness that is kind of adds to the party a little bit, adds to the mix, rather than it just being about skills. Because I could have 5 people in the room and train them exactly the same way because of who they are. Some will take it and run with it, some will struggle with it, some won't do anything with it. And so it's a really interesting mix when you look at what actually means success.
Yeah, I bet you've come across so many different personalities. I find all the behaviour stuff so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And really often when you're a trainer, the personalities that are often the most successful are not the ones that are the best in a training room. You know, they're the ones that get really restless. They don't, why should I be here? I want to be out on the phone. And so as a trainer, it's really interesting to pick up the traits that aren't necessarily what makes somebody, it's a bit like in recruitment, isn't it? Like someone who's good at interviewing doesn't mean that they're going to be good at the job they're being interviewed for. It's the same thing in a training environment. So the sort of work I've done so you can see behaviours is actually sitting with people at their desks, working with people in their work environment rather than just in a like closed off training room. Then you see they're like the true whole person, really.
That's
Because
brilliant.
the thing about behaviours is it's not about trying to change people's behaviours at all. It's about helping people to play to their best natural behaviours and develop habits that are going to serve them, basically. So it's this kind of constant question of people, you like are really good recruiters in this instance, are they made or are they born? And I think kind of come to the conclusion that there is no full answer for that. I think if you've got people who are born with certain natural instincts and behaviours, they're going to be more inclined to find it easy. But there are also loads of things that you can do to get better, regardless of what you're born with.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm really interested in learning more about today is what comes naturally, what doesn't come naturally, and can anything be trained? Can anyone be a good contract biller? So I'm really interested in learning more.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the other thing I'd like to be able to share with you is kind of how to spot it. Like the minute we start talking behaviours and things, it all feels a little bit intangible. So looking at what can be developed, what is just luck of the draw that you're born with, and then how to spot that and do more with it in ourselves or in the people around us. So I use a specific profiling system, which is quite unique in its way. I mean, I don't know, have you used profiling systems? Do you know much about them?
I have in other jobs previously, but because I'm kind of always been on the sales side of it, I've never been on the other side, kind of understanding it probably as fully as you do. Well, definitely not as fully as you do, but I have, do you know what? Quite often in interviews, I've had to do profiling questionnaires and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many tools out there now because everybody recognises that that there are things you just can't necessarily catch in an interview process, but that you want to know about somebody. I'm qualified and have used quite a few of these tools. And the reason I use the one we're going to talk about today, I3, is because it's fundamentally different to most of the ones out there. Most of the ones out there are what you call type based. So that means if you get in like Thomas International, or you might have heard of that, or the DISC one, or the 16 personalities MBTI insights, where you're told what color you are, or what if you're ENFP, or if you're number 2 on the Enneagram. You've got all these kind of, but basically put into types, because that's the easiest way for us to work, isn't it? To categorize each other. they're really good and they're really accurate. But what they do is they kind of pigeonhole us. So they'd say you'd do one of these things and you'd get a report that's computer generated, and it would tell you, basically give you like a 40-page report potentially on who you are and what training needs you'll have and what you're likely to be good at. And the way they work the accuracy out is they say, read that, and if you agree with 92 out of the 100 statements, we'll say that this is good enough, it's accurate enough. But ultimately it's computer generated. The difference with I3 profiling is that it's called trait-based, not type-based. And that's what I look at, is the nuances. So rather than saying, by being this, you're definitely not this, it doesn't pigeonhole you. Basically, we come up with, I'll show you in a sec, but it comes up, rather than saying, Hannah, you are A, it says, Hannah, you have got really dominant X behaviours and less dominant Y behaviours.
So it takes into account lots of different behaviours rather than just pigeonholing. Yeah,
totally there. So when I'm explaining it to people, I mean, and the other thing about I3 is it sounds like I'm just selling I3 here, which I'm an associate accredited coach with I3. They're an organisation in the UK and South Africa. But what I find as a coach is it's this really versatile tool, because it's like a hot wire to helping people understand what makes them tick and how they get on with each other. So you've got to think about it. If I'm gonna share screen actually and tell you, because
let's have a look at the system.
Yeah, I'm going to show you, because this isn't about explaining necessarily the I3 process. It's about demonstrating how you can get traits of top contract billers, for example, from the data. Because what I3 looks at is our instinctive behaviours around 7 specific types of core human behaviours, and we have all of these behaviours. Everyone's got them all, okay? So they are inquiring where that's much more coming from the brain, and you're thinking about facts and research, and you make your decisions based on information. High promoting people with that when that one's up high for us, tend to be naturally vocally expressive and bring a very kind of starting energy and want to talk about anything and everything. Don't tend to listen quite as much, whereas inquirers are always listening and working out what the facts are. And then you've got high organising, or organising as a behaviour, where you're looking much more at the long term, the bigger picture strategic stuff. For me, it's leading really, not organising. Then there's this, the next behaviour is perceiving, which is all about our gut instincts. It's like just trusting what we see, and immediately you've got no filter. You're not deciding about something based on information. You're just saying, that looks right to me, I think that. So you tend to have people who are high perceiving tend to have, as you can see, they think really quickly because they don't have any reason. It's purely subjective, purely based on their own feelings. So they make decisions really quickly and tend to have quite creative, outlandish ideas a lot of the time. And then we've got enterprising, and this is a really pragmatic. It's the one with common sense. It's the one where we literally we know about the big picture, we know what needs to be done, but actually we're the ones that make things happen by having that flexibility to adapt to situations and get the most out of it. Tend to have quite a lot of like street savvy, ability to share and bring others on as well. And then there's responding, which people often think that if you're low responding, as in you don't have it as a very, very high trait, that you're not a kind person, or you're not able to love. It's not that at all. We're all, with all of this, we're thinking about what are the instincts. Immediately, if someone asks you a question, what are you thinking? Someone who's high responding is going to think, oh, I wonder how Hannah's going to feel about that, and I wonder if that's going to impact John really a lot. So they're thinking about the impact of anything they say and do and decide on other people, which, as you can imagine, can tie you up in knots, right? So it's a gorgeous, they're all fabulous behaviors in themselves, with like pluses and minuses, of course, with anything. And the last one is practical, which is all about getting things done. These are your starter finishers, team builders. They'll do everything for the task and for the here and now, living like in the present moment, not necessarily thinking about the long term. So we've got this range of behaviours and indicators, and they are not connected to each other. So when you answer the question, it's trait based, because by being high inquiring doesn't mean you're automatically low perceiving. They're all independently. I kind of explain it like it's like you take a shot of each one. But once you've thrown all your answers together, it's a 10-minute online assessment. You get what we would think of as a cocktail, which is your unique combination. So what I'm going to share with you now, this is what happens, right? These are the behaviour profiles of the 17 best contract billers I've worked with over the last 5 years. So everyone on here, what we call it a DNA rocket, which basically means the higher the behaviour, the more dominant it is for you. And most interested as a coach in looking at the lowest 1 or 2 and the top 1 or 2.
Right.
And so these all have in common the fact that these people are contract billers. They've all billed $250,000 plus. When you look at it, Hannah, what do you see? What colours jump out at you near the top?
So the purple perceiving, a lot of those at the top, the darker blue inquiring.
Yeah.
They seem to
That's
be the
got
two.
a real range, hasn't it? It's got like loads at the bottom and at the top. Yeah.
A lot of the bottoms responding.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, what we know about that in terms of sales resilience is not worrying about what other people think is really helpful sometimes, especially if you're in contract. Just keeping on going and not taking things personally. So that can be a really important trait to have if you're an account manager or you're developing relationships within teams. Really, really important. But in terms of just getting out there and getting all the no's, less vital. So yeah, and you can see as well the orange ones there, isn't it? And the yellow's got a pretty steady
quite high,
top half.
Well, there's only one orange that is right at the top. The third one on the left-hand side, on the top. Is that the only orange one at the top?
Yes, it's the only one right at the top, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they're high. Generally, there's only one that's also at the bottom. So what happens is with all these scores, they're all independent scores, okay? I look at this, it's like, whoa, I can see some themes, I can see some trends, and it's all we can ever really do. Like when you're using this as a recruitment tool, you would never do it purely based on behaviours. Obviously, you're looking at capability, intelligence, context, experience as well. But I wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and so I split the group down even further. Yes, I'm going to go on. I'll come back to this. No, I won't. I'll come back here. Sorry. I just remembered that the other part of that we get is, of course, this. Can you see this screen now where we've got the grid?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is taking it further than just extrovert, introvert. So people get plotted. These 17 people, their behaviours we've got, and then we're looking at the environment they thrive in. This has become so much more important since COVID, where people can work from home, etc. And there's the age-old debate within recruitment businesses, I would say, around whether it is feasible for big billers to work entirely at home. Whole nother conversation, isn't it? But basically, where people get plotted is will demonstrate, based by their answers, will demonstrate what their thriving environment is. So what you'll see is most of these people are south of the border, as it were. They're in the bottom half, and that bottom half, as it's explained on the left-hand side of the screen, is people whose preference is to work with and around other people. That's working in a social environment. Because on the right-hand side, it tends to be that you prefer to work in very kind of expected ways, very tried and tested processes. The left-hand side tends to be more open to change and variety. But then in the top half, we've got people who really prefer to work alone and don't need to collaborate with others. Now, as a general rule, I would say, working with it, having had an awful lot of recruitment profiles done over the last 10 years, I'd say at least 70% of people are in the social half.
Right. Yeah.
And if I had to just anecdotally put money on it, I would say in the social ordered quadrant, this one here is where you will find, or towards this line here, where you're open to change, but you like to do things kind of in a certain way. That's what we've got. So what does this tell us about people in general when we're looking at the traits? I've split it down a little bit more. So basically what we've got here are the combined, so what we can do with the profiling system is to get aggregate scores. So basically you can add up all the scores for each of these 7 behaviours for the people who were in the 250 to 400 club, as it were, and then the same for those in the 400 to 1.5 mil. So if we look first at the behaviours, what do you notice? What's the same for both groups?
They both got perceiving at the top, and
Yeah.
promoting, enterprising are second and third.
Yeah. So top 3.
Yeah. They're
So the
organising
top 3
away from each other as well.
Yeah, they're not far away. So the big difference between them is where responding and practical are placed. But the similarities are the top 3. So I found that fascinating, because what that's saying is, but don't forget, a 250k biller is nothing to sniff at, right? So what we're saying is, when we're looking at strong, consistent billers to exceptional billers, they all share the same top 3 traits. And so that makes it really easy for me to then drill down and say, well, what are the behaviours that I'd see with those combinations? When we look at the sort of more extremes of the lower end, what we see is that responding in particular has got a different place. So those who are billing consistently, north of 400k, have got a very low responding, which will give them that even higher resilience, that kind of not being affected by other people's views and opinions. And look at the social and the environment then with these guys. So what do you see? What's different about the 400?
The 400 to the 1.5, from looking at it, look as though more of them don't like to work in a social environment or a less social environment, whereas the 250 to 400 are more kind of in the social environment.
Exactly that, yeah.
Those are a couple. On the bottom left, is it flexible? It's flexible social.
Yeah, you've got an outlier. You've got a couple of outliers, which you always have, because look, you can't, so these are never like concrete, absolutely follow these rules. But what this reinforces when we're looking at it is thinking about what type, if we're thinking about wanting to be contract billers or wanting to hire contract billers, what we're saying is you can get 2 different types in that. These guys are going to be excellent and consistent and social, so much more likely to contribute to the team as a whole and to fit into the team you have. These guys are rock stars, absolutely, and yet there is that lone wolf tendency. So what comes with that can be disruptive, can mean that they will just go off and do this somewhere else quite soon. All of it depends what people want in their business, the type that you might go for, but those are the sort of nuances within it, if you like.
So possibly harder to retain the lone wolves.
Possibly, but if you want someone to absolutely go at your business, the lone wolves will serve you and themselves for a while. So nothing's forever in these days, are they? But they may be harder to retain, or they may have a different impact on the team they're in. So because they will less hunt in packs, as lone wolf, as it says, where tend to operate to their own tune, which you often get with exceptional billers. I think that's probably some people would recognise. So look, this is what this does is I've taken from this really the biggest message of all around traits. Is these top 3 behaviours, and I pulled those into something that's kind of more accessible to look at, and thought about in terms of, I've called it the 7 Ps, and just thought about whether with these, how we identify them in ourselves and in others, and which ones are more that you can train and which ones less so. So I don't know, should we have a look at those?
Yeah, let's have a look at the 7 Ps, definitely.
So here they are. I made them all. So, I mean, you can see there's perceive and promote are actually from those two top, two top ones anyway. But they've all got something different, and it's about the combination of those 3 at the top that really bring it. So I would say these are all really important, but there's probably 3 that I would say if that are the absolute essentials. They are the core ingredients of a really great contract recruiter. Don't know if you want to have a go at guessing which 3 are most important.
Pace, I would have thought.
Yes.
Acting quick. Persist, possibly. And proactive.
Proactive is a really, I mean, they're all great, right? They're all important. Proactive, I wouldn't put in my top 3, purely because actually it's one of the ones that you can train as well. So when you're looking at recruiting, you want to be looking at what do people do naturally and what would people potentially struggle with. So for me, pace, pivot, and persist are the top 3. Right. And I use, when I'm explaining it to people, I tend to use a rugby analogy, right? So the thing about pace, okay, is that we know what contracts like. It's here today, gone tomorrow. Literally, the average contract vacancy apparently is live for up to 2 days, but we know that that's an industry average. But certainly, an awful lot of the contract recruiters that I've seen in action, they'll get a call in and they will make the placement on the call because they know that put the phone down and they'll have called someone else, or someone else will have beaten them to it. So having that ability to think fast, think on your feet, and to work out, okay, this is worth running with. I've got that drive that says I want to get there first. Tends to get the results and the wins, and obviously with that comes impatience and all sorts of other traits that are less easy to manage and to handle, but that sense of complete urgency and competitive spirit and I've got someone for that, I'm ready, I'm on it, is something that tends to be natural to people.
Yeah, definitely. Acting quick.
Yeah, like I'm working with so we run a contract DNA program, we call it, and it's a 6-week, it runs over 6 weeks, helping people take their perm business and convert a contract business out of it in terms of using the base that you've got with your perm business. And just interesting, some of these traits are shared with perm and contract recruiters, of course, but I think pace is one of the ones that's different, because really often with perm we can get exclusivity and we're going to need to be thorough. So I'm working with a guy at the moment who's a contract, he's building a contract desk, but he's a perm guy through and through. And he was saying to me the other day in one of our sessions that I got a vacancy called in this morning, a contract one. And I went, oh, brilliant, did you get it? He said, no, I was going to look at it after lunch. I was like, well, it'll be gone.
Jump on it now, jump on it, strike while the iron's hot. Yeah, oh my goodness.
You snooze, you lose. So yeah, this is really, it's really important, and we can look for that, we can see that in people, can't we? It's an easy one to spot, I think. And then the next one is pivot, right? It's about being able to switch and change rather than doing what we planned in the morning. And a lot of people say that really great recruiters will claim you can't plan your day. Now, I'd argue that you can, but I would also argue that you can plan a framework of your day and you can build in slack time knowing that you're going to generate opportunities. And a contract recruiter who pivots well could well be somebody who literally starts their day thinking that they're working on a certain vacancy, gets a call to say that someone didn't show up, quickly turns around and gets that sorted, then finds out that someone else lets someone else down and thinks, oh, I could probably backfill that.
Yeah.
So they respond without it being chaotic, which it might feel like sometimes. They are able to literally dance with where the opportunities are. So pivot and pace go hand in hand, I would say. And if you've got someone who needs to think things out, work things out, think about how other people are going to react, that's probably not lending itself to the thinking is you can learn all of these things, but it will cost you more if it doesn't come naturally. So with pivot in particular, I think if you're someone who likes to kind of their day to go the way they thought it was going to, then contract is probably not for you.
Right. That was going to be one of my questions, actually. Is there, and I didn't know if it was a bit of a harsh question, but is there just, I don't know if it's a very nice word, but no hope for some people? Do you ever come across people and think you just don't quite fit the mold at all, even though stuff can be trained and learnt?
Yes, I do, and one can. I would say, Seamus, so I can see you. I would say that there's got to be that there are certain things going to make it harder. So, for example, that list of 17 contract billers that I showed you all the pictures of, Kate and Simon Cross are both on that. Okay, because they are and have been successful contract billers. I'm not on that list. I will never be. I was a decent perm recruiter, contract, but I've got very high responding. And so as a contract recruiter, that means I would dither potentially. And again, I'm not saying everyone would. It's all about the whole combination. But this idea of, oh, I don't want to just keep going with that because I'll let them down. There's an emotional cost, which can stress people out. So there's that, and sometimes it's more about just seeing what they're more suited to. So people who are really high inquiring very often are more likely to suit perm, where they will enjoy really nailing a vacancy and really understanding the candidate and interviewing them well, etc. They'll get their kicks out of that and do that with real pride. So naturally we thrive doing the things that come naturally to us. So I think it's very often you'd put someone in a position and they would see themselves that it didn't really suit pretty quick. Yeah. So where are we? So the last one is persist, the last of the top three. Am I sharing my screen now? Can you see?
That's fine. Yeah, we've got the persist.
Yeah. Well, this is the tough one. Now, I would say persist of the top three. Persist is the one we can do most about, because if we've got, basically, it's people who just don't give up. So there could well be an element of steel in someone that is just determined to be the last man standing, to be the first one across the line, etc. But we can really help people by the mindset that we work with and by setting up activities that generate consistency. For example, you always call, you're not going to give up after 2 calls to a client, or you've got a tracking system where you speak to candidates regularly, that can help you if there's a mindset and a way that the whole business operates that rewards persistence. Then it's something that you can work on, and you can kind of get ingrained into the way you behave, really.
So that's the kind of the 3 traits that that you think are most important. So what about the other 4 then? So we've got, is it proactive, perceptive, and promoters? Oh, and pulse. Is that right?
Yeah. So pulses, it might seem like I've crowbarred that P in, but what I mean by pulse is it's like you've literally got your finger on the pulse. The difference with perm, for example, is there's quite a lot of secrecy with perm. So you can end up, a contract recruiter would literally go, oh, I've got a vacancy, and they'd ring everyone they could think of, and they'd ring those candidates, and the candidates will be on the grapevine. So you know what's going on and who's coming available, and you're constantly in contact, Whereas perm, there's often this sense of, oh, I don't want people to know I'm even thinking about leaving, and there's exclusivity on this. So just so different. It's such a bubble, perm world, whereas the contract world is literally, if you own your space, if you know what's going on, if you're in construction recruitment, for example, you know all the projects that are starting and finishing, what stages they're at, you literally could be playing chess with where everybody needs to go.
Big game.
Yeah, it's a great big game. Yeah, absolutely. And promote, look, honestly, contract recruiters, they're quite gossipy in a way, right? So what's going on? Did you hear about so-and-so? So they will choose phone over email. They'll choose phone every time. Excuse me, I've been talking far too much. And that's just natural. That just comes naturally. And then perceive, I think that's probably the hardest one to train. It can come with a bit of it can come with experience, but actually high perceivers are people who spot opportunities and are likely to spot what's going to go wrong. So if you think about the way we're positioning contract, you're trying to, you know, very often you'll get a no from a hiring manager who says, oh, we don't do contract recruitment, for example, we prefer to do perm. Someone who's high perceiving will probably be able to kind of go in there and go, yeah, but what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what happened when somebody broke their leg last month? What did you do about that? And they'll sort of anticipate the challenges and spot those opportunities. It's the kind of most intangible one of them all, really, but it's often the one, as you saw on the traits, it's the top one consistently. It's that X factor who just trust their instincts and go with it. And then what else haven't I covered? I guess proactive.
I was proactive, yes.
Yeah, and proactive. Look, that is about people just not waiting for things to come to them. You know, you don't tend to have contract recruiters who will sit there and go, oh, it's just quiet at the moment. They'll go out and find. They will naturally go out and find. But again, I think proactive is the other one. I like persist, that you can train. You can train people to say, it is my job to create opportunities. It is my job to go and find, you know, that vacancy, that candidate, and expect that things won't come to them. They just need to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Go get attitude.
The go-getters. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the 7, I think, isn't it? Have we done them all?
Promoters. Would you promote?
Yeah, promoters said, but on the phone all the time. Yeah.
So I think kind of from our conversation, the kind of takeaways I'm taking is, you know, there's obviously the 7 Ps, but I think being agile, proactive, flexible, and also being able to work at pace are quite key things from what you've said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we just take away as a takeaway, I mean, if people would be interested in having, I've got a summary of this that we can send out, because you can start to spot those behaviours in yourselves and in others and encouraging it, because they are, and that we talk about the energy and the buzz in the room. That's what comes with the pace and the promote. It's the talking and the rushing, isn't it? Really.
Never a dull moment, which again I think some people would love naturally, and for some people
others would be exhausted by.
I'm just conscious of time, so we're going to have to wrap up there, but thank you so much for joining me today, Alice. I think it's been really helpful. I've learned a lot today, and there's lots of the traits I've found really interesting to get more familiar with, and also just understanding what comes naturally, what doesn't, what can be trained. For anyone that is thinking of going into contract or already does contract and they want to learn more, I would highly recommend you have a look at Coral Coached, and potentially register on one of their courses with Kate, Alice and Simon. The wealth of knowledge that they have between the 3 of them is huge. So yeah, I do encourage you all to go and take a look. Next week I am actually going to be joined by Simon it's Wednesday the 11th of December at the same time, 10 AM, and we'll be discussing 7-figure secrets inside the mind of a high-performing contract recruiter. So we'll talk all about Simon's career and his story to date. which should be a really interesting chat. So please do join me then. I will be sharing the link to register for that on my LinkedIn at some point today. Alice, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, it's been great.
Is there anything that you want to say before we shut off or close off?
Just that I think we know, in terms of looking forward at the business, contract recruitment is set to grow globally next year. And there's been a recent survey done that says that 47% of UK recruitment businesses want to grow their contract books for different reasons, for recurring revenue, sort of peace of mind around it, just to be able to offer their clients more. And then, of course, as well, to have a sellable asset, because the contract book is the thing that people want. So with that in mind, we are stop sharing. So with that in mind, you know, that's why we're gearing up to help people see it as accessible, basically. So yeah, give us a call. We're more than happy to have a discovery call with you and see how we can help you with it in your business. And we've got program that's for our next program's running in January. It's a group coaching program, so we can get the details out to you through Workwell.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Alice. And thanks everyone for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.